to our live stream. Today, if you don't know, is Global Peer Support Celebration Day. So we might ask, what is a peer support person? Well, here at the VA Maryland Healthcare System and at the VA throughout the nation, peer supports play a very integral role in helping fellow veterans on their healing journey. They share their lived experiences and they become a source of inspiration and a source of comfort. So with us today is Dr. Paula Smith Benson, who is a peer support specialist and an Air Force veteran who reached the rank of major at um and she is a peer support specialist here at the VA Maryland Healthcare System, and Reverend Vale Leonard, who is a supervisor of peer supports at a place in both East and West Baltimore called Lights of the Truth Center. So welcome, and thank you for joining us today. So we're
Thank
going to
you.
start with Paula. What is a peer support specialist, and how did you get to become one?
So, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us, and to the fellow peers out there, happy Global Peer Support Celebration Day. So, a peer support specialist is an individual that has either had an experience of substance misuse and or a mental health diagnosis, that is in recovery and chooses to use their life, their experiences to share with others. So, here within the VA Maryland healthcare system, we utilize our stories, our healing journey. So, for me, all of my mental health services, treatment, and care happened within the Veteran Health Administration across the nation. So I am an individual with a mental health diagnosis that is in recovery. So the purpose of peers is that we in the military, we really have strong bonds and camaraderie, and we share a lot of lived experiences. So we are here to be the embodiment of hope and recovery, living witnesses and examples that recovery is possible. So we connect people to resources in the VA, in the community. We inspire through hope, hopeful stories, and we let folks know you're not alone. That is our sole purpose and responsibility. And we're so grateful to be here.
I think that's very important to know that we're not alone. Reverend Vale, I understand that in your centers you actually supervise peer support specialists. What does that look like? How do you supervise someone who's trying to help others?
That's a good question. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here today. Thank you for having me. Well, when you are supporting someone who's supporting others, our supervision is more like coaching. It's supporting a person who is already in recovery, who is working on their recovery process, sharing themselves with others. And so, as a supervisor, we actually coach the peers. How do you actually support others? What do you need to do to support other people? What does that look like? We support them to understand stage appropriate care, because that's very important, to be able to recognize where a person is, to meet them where they are, so to speak, so that you're not talking to someone who has 10 days or 30 days like someone who has a year, so that we can provide that adequate, loving, caring support. It's very important to recognize what stage of recovery a person is in.
That seems to be a very important point because it's sort of like making sure that you coach someone who's learning how to walk to learn how to walk as opposed to running. They're not going to
Yes,
be running if they're just learning how to walk.
yes.
So, Paula, Dr. Smith, can you tell us a little bit about your journey toward the peer support specialist role that you now play? You're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now.
Yeah.
Okay. My apologies. So I served from 1989 to 2009 in the United States Air Force. And as a result of my military service, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. So prior to receiving that diagnosis, I served in the military as a registered nurse. And then I went on to become a certified nurse midwife. So I was part of the healthcare profession, but just in another area. But after the diagnosis of post traumatic stress, my life changed. And I had to take time off to say it's okay not to be okay and seek the necessary help that I needed. So I started my mental health recovery journey in 2009. And around about 2014, I experienced domestic abuse and intimate partner violence. And as a consequence of that, I became very, very depressed and subsequently suicidal. And I actually did attempt to take my life. And as a consequence of that, I ended up in an inpatient hospital in Philadelphia. It was the Philadelphia VA. And I was feeling very hopeless, helpless, and really powerless because I just could not wrap my head around the fact that mental health treatment was very different than treatment for our bodies. What do I mean by that? I also live with hypertension. And I go to the doctor gives me my prescription for my hypertension medications. I take it every day as prescribed. And then the intent is that my blood pressure will go down with diet, exercise, and those kinds of modifications. But the journey for mental health recovery and behavioral health recovery doesn't always go in a straight line. It's not a linear process. It's a day by day journey. So I just couldn't understand that, am I going to get better or not? I'm doing everything that I'm being asked to do, but things were not looking like just taking my blood pressure medication. So at that point of helplessness, hopelessness, and really not seeing a lot of light, when I was on the inpatient unit, a staff person walked up to me and they said, "You will recover. You're not alone." And they asked me if it was okay to start telling a part of their recovery journey. Now, I've got to share this with you. As an advanced practice nurse, we were not able to share our personal stories and experiences. So this was very unique, very different. And I was like, what in the world is going on? This person's actually telling me what is going on in their lives. So I actively listened because I was just intrigued. I had never heard of such a thing. And she began to tell me her own journey. And guess what? She had also attempted to take her life as well. And she said, "We're still here. Recovery is possible." And here's the thing. She said, "You're not alone." That was the pivotal point. That's the moment where just a little bit of hope began to increase. I said, "What do you mean? I can get better?" She was like, "Yes, you can get better." That was a turning point. That was a point that changed my entire life. And I said to myself, even in that space and place, I said, if I get up out of here, I'm going to come back and become a peer. I didn't even know how to do that. I didn't know what training I needed. I just didn't know, but that was my recovery goal. And I kept my eyes focused on the goal of becoming a peer. And that's what gave me the inspiration to doing the work that was necessary for me to find wholeness. What was interesting is that everything I needed was inside of me the whole time. I just didn't know it. So that's what happened with that interaction with the peer. She allowed me to turn within and find something on the inside that was going to impact what was happening on the outside. And that was in 2014. And I continued my mental health treatment journey. And in 2021, I went to peer recovery training in Louisiana, and I became a peer specialist at that time and a registered peer supervisor. So that was the inspiration for becoming a peer. I felt like it was my calling. It was my purpose. And all of this uncertainty and all of these questions and what was appearing as pain, what seemed to be pain, now I could transform it into something positive. That made my life worth living. That there was something else on the inside that I could share with another person. And that's how I ended up getting in the seat. And it's the best decision that I ever made.
Did you know when that staff person started sharing her life, her lived experience with you, that she was a peer support specialist? And did you know what that meant?
I absolutely did not know. She did identify herself as a peer, and I think she must have been able to read my nonverbals, that my antennas were up. So I said, whoa, this is unethical. What is going on here? And I'm already not feeling well. So I'm thinking, I must really be, I don't know what's happening. So yeah, because I asked, I said, is it okay for you to be saying this? And then she had to explain to me what a peer was. And that this is part of our responsibility. She said, I committed to use my story as a tool for healing. And she introduced me to what we call WRAP, which is Wellness Recovery Action Planning. I started going to her groups and building what we call recovery capital, tapping into those internal resources, finding out what natural supports were in the community. So that interaction changed my entire life. And that introduced me to what we call, the fancy term is psychosocial rehabilitation and recovery. And that is a strength-based approach to wellness and wholeness, knowing the assumption is that there is an innate strength and ability within each human being. And it's similar to if I get a paper cut today, somehow my body knows how to heal itself. And by tomorrow, there's evidence of a little scab. Same thing with psychosocial rehabilitation and recovery, tapping into that strength that is innate within each human being. And the question becomes, what's strong in you? Not what's wrong. What's strong?
Yeah.
And let's start building from there.
So how did you end up coming in contact with Reverend Vale?
Wow. That was what it seemed like. It was absolutely divine. I don't have another word for it. So when I arrived here in Baltimore, I just assumptions that my Louisiana license, which is fine here within the VA, would allow me to serve in the community. And then I discovered that there was no reciprocity between Maryland and Louisiana. There is reciprocity with some states, but Louisiana wasn't one of them. And I was so driven to serve the community here in Baltimore and become a part of this recovery. It's a movement. I said, what do I need to do to get equipped, educated, and equipped to serve? And that's how I ended up finding Reverend Vale, a colleague here at the VA. introduced me to someone that works on Reverend Vale's team. And then I was introduced to the Maryland Peer Advisory Council's Advocacy and Leadership Program. And that was the training program that I entered. And I think it took me about a year to fulfill all the classes and the supervision and the requirements.
Mhm.
And I have to be honest, Reverend Vale's demonstration was so powerful that I knew I was in the right place at the right time. And even if I had to start all over again, as if it was day zero, it was the right thing to do. And it's the best decision I could have ever made. And my professional clinical practice is very, very different. So I'm grateful for the foundation that was laid in Louisiana. But Reverend Vale represents the potentiality within the profession. She demonstrates what's possible in the area of advocacy and leadership, which is what I'm passionate about. So when we met and intersected, I can remember the first night that we were on the Zoom call in the class. And Reverend Vale, I don't know if you recall, but I was crying.
I remember.
Do you remember that,
I
Reverend Vale?
remember that. Yes, I do.
Oh my gosh. And that was it.
So I heard both of you speak about the recovery movement. What
Yes.
do you exactly mean? Maybe Reverend Vale can speak to. What do you mean by recovery movement?
There is a whole group, a community of people who are in recovery and who have allies that are in recovery. There are many laws, many regulations, many stipulations that are placed on the recovery community. As we grow and inform the public and support each other to grow, it is important for us to develop leaders. It is important for us to develop folks who have a voice, who have a presence, who are able to get a seat at the table so that we can begin to move recovery forward. You see, the general public is not clear about what recovery is. And many family members don't understand what their loved ones are going through. So it is paramount for us to build a group of people who are voicing that recovery is possible, that we are voicing that people are not broken and don't need to be fixed. And so we're actively, intentionally building leaders in the recovery community who can speak to our movement, speak to our challenges, have the ability to change or alter or even introduce laws that will support recovery and support the journey that we're on right now. You see, Paul has brought up many important points. One of them is the joy in the journey. She's talking about the joy in this journey, even though it seems challenging, even though it's incredible to understand that this journey brings about a joy. It does. The other thing that she brought up that was very important is that for those of us who are recovering and those of us who are seeking treatment and care, there is and has been for years, a divide between those professionals who can speak to us because there are barriers there, there are laws there, regulations that they cannot share certain things, but a peer can share all of themselves with that person. And so we have been able to close that divide, so to speak, so that we can support, encourage, and inspire people to move forward. You need a movement to be able to do that, to be able to talk to the community, to be able to talk with politicians, to be able to affect law. You need a movement to get the general public to recognize that we are your sisters and your brothers, your mothers and your fathers, your daughters and your sons, and we do recover. that's an important message to get out there.
It would seem so, because a lot of times people dismiss others or write them off, especially if there's substance use abuse involved or severe mental health issues involved. I mean, people reach a point where they just don't want to deal with a person who has a mental health issue anymore.
Yes.
So Paula, can you talk about how you've witnessed being sharing your lived experience with others has brought about a transformation in their lives, even if it's subtle? You are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
This is very interesting. My apologies. I'm not touching anything, but I'll double
No, I
check
can see
next
that.
time. Thank you.
Technology.
Yes. So in terms of what I witnessed, what I want to lift up in this moment is that there are wonderful, wonderful programs here within the Veterans Health Administration. I am also an individual that experienced military sexual trauma. The Veterans Health Administration provides care and services for those of us, all veterans, that have had the experience of military sexual assault. But the stigma, which is what Reverend Vale was alluding to, those negative beliefs, those negative images are a very important factor in terms of a barrier for people accessing care.
Yes.
Why am I bringing this up? Every single day, when a veteran crosses the threshold of these doors, and I can greet them and show up, would you like to know what my intention is every day that I set?
Sure.
That every single person, family member, community member, and particularly our nation's heroes, that when I have the privilege to serve them, that they will choose the VA again. When someone books another appointment, when somebody keeps their appointments, when someone continues to work on their recovery. We have the whole health model here within the Veterans Health Administration, which puts the veteran at the center of care. When I see veterans taking charge of their lives and their health, that's what I witness every day. That you booked another appointment, that I introduced myself to you and you were willing to try one group, but you'd like to come back again. Or if I'm working with someone with a one-on-one peer support, you're booking another appointment. We're working on your wellness recovery action plan. So we are a key and integral part in access to care because people are returning to the VA. And the Veterans Health Administration has saved my life. I would not be here if it wasn't for the dedicated professional staff all across the nation that was willing to care for me and to hold on to hope for years when I couldn't hold on to it for myself. They could see something else greater and better for me. They could see a light that I wasn't able to see. So every day I witness it. When my phone rings, it's a witness. When someone comes in, it's a witness. When someone keeps an appointment, it's a witness. Because if I can get the message out that we are here to serve you, and that barrier begins to come down, and people are willing to do the work that they need to do to remember that they're whole. Sometimes we just forget. We forget that we're whole. We forget that. That's what brings me joy. That's the witness. That's my everyday intention when I put my feet on the ground. Allow me to serve where someone will choose VA just one more time.
Mhm.
That's it.
Thank you so much. And
Mhm.
Reverend Valley, can
Vale.
anybody become Reverend Vale? Can anybody become a peer support if they're not a veteran? Or do you help them achieve that so they can help others if they're not attached to the VA?
Absolutely, absolutely. Anyone can really take the classes and become a peer. And this is just evidence of how effective the movement is. Because when we first started the peer services, peers weren't serving in the VA. They weren't serving in the hospitals. They weren't serving in the fire stations. They weren't serving, on ambulances. So we're growing. This is a new industry, and we are growing into every aspect, into every field, because people are suffering everywhere across the board. And so peer services are required everywhere. And we're seeing it continuing to unfold. Yes.
So aside from sharing their lived experiences and things like that, can peers actually inspire others to take those first steps into a recovery journey?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is the purpose. That is the intention. You see, and peers, I don't think people recognize how vast the training is. So in peer services, peers are taught how the language of recovery. They're taught ethics. They're taught professionalism. They're taught spirituality. And so it rounds the person out so that they are able to open themselves up in a safe way, to be able to inspire, uplift, encourage, be that light, be that hope, be that outstretched hand, that ear to hear, that shoulder to lean on. And we can train and support people in the skills and give them the talents and the abilities to be able to do that.
And Paula, if a veteran listening here or a veteran's family member listening to here who has overcome, let's say, substance use or severe mental health or PTSD or depression or suicide, and they want to become a peer to help other veterans, what are their first steps?
Great question, Rosalia. Thank you so much. I think that one of the first steps would be to just reach out to a peer and just have a conversation. Because like Reverend Vale said, there's just so much to our profession. It's so much to the service that we provide. We don't see ourselves helping anyone. Helping suggests a power differential, that
Yes.
I possess something that you don't. And we don't see that. We function on mutuality. So we are serving, we are supporters, supporting what we know is already there.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure that's clear. So I would reach out to a peer if you have questions. I'm very happy to speak to anyone. Here at the VA, we also have our local recovery coordinator, her name is Dr. Ty. So that would be an excellent resource too. And then we have Reverend Vale and the Light of Truth Center, Maryland Peer Advisory Council. There's a host of other organizations across the country, but particularly here in Maryland too, that train peers. And the certification board, which is IC and RC here in Maryland, it's the MABPCB, which is the board that credentials and oversees the professional practice of peers, is also a great starting point, because that will help the individual to see what the application process looks like, what the requirements are. and then finding a program that's a good fit. So for me, the program that Reverend Vale was a part of was a perfect fit because my goal is leadership and advocacy. So now I've entered into a community and I have mentors such as Reverend Vale that can help me, coach me into moving forward. Thank you, Reverend Vale, as a leader, because I don't have to do it alone. I'm not alone either as a peer. So that message continues. So as I grow, as I learn, as I unfold, I have resources available in others that have walked this path before. So it's just a tremendous opportunity to see the profession blossom and grow. There are over 1,300 certified peer recovery specialists that work within the Veterans Health Administration all across the country. So we are represented in every medical center, working in various departments, whether it's vocational rehabilitation, which is where I work, or perhaps in the psychosocial rehabilitation and recovery program, some of our outreach programs, but peers are there. We even serve on the Veterans Crisis Line.
Mm-hmm.
So if you happen to be experiencing, for those that are out there, if you happen to be experiencing a mental health emergency, or you're having any thoughts of suicide, the number that you can call is 988. That number is available to all, but there is an option, number one, if you are a veteran. So anybody can dial 988, but there is option one, which is specific support for veterans. So I've used that number many times. I'm so grateful for the support that was provided. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There's always a listening ear, and there's someone there to serve. And you may be speaking with a peer when you end up calling, because that's also an area that we work. So, hopefully that answered the question.
I think it has. I want to thank you, both of you, for talking about the burgeoning new field of peer support specialists today on Peer Support Celebration Day. Thank you, Dr. Vale, for joining us to talk about how veterans' family members can take on the mantle if they would like to serve in that way. And we all know that veterans are always want to serve. That's why they put on the uniform to begin with. So thank you both. If anybody has any questions, Paula, how can they reach you? I can put a phone number up.
Sure. Thank you. Yes, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach me at 410-361-0619.
Wait a minute.
That is
361.
410-361.
What is the rest of that number?
0619.
Okay. Everyone is going to be able to see that number. Thank you for anyone who's watching. We appreciate it. We hope we inspired people out there, and happy Global Peer Support Celebration Day. Bye-bye, y'all. See you on our next stream.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.